Good morning. Live with Tao. From ego to awakening. From ego to awakening is transformation, is transcendence. It is like this. You are standing in front of the mirror. You are real. The mirror is real. And you are being reflected in the mirror. Is your reflection real? No. You are real, mirror is real, but the reflection that you are seeing in the mirror is not real. This reflection is ego. This you have to understand. You are real, the mirror is real, but the reflection is reflection and it is not real, not a reality. So when it comes, the brain cells are real, consciousness is real, but when consciousness gets involved in the brain cell or attached, identified with the brain cell, then ego is formed. If you move from the mirror, the reflection will not be there, ego will not form. So how ego forms? Your brain cells are real, consciousness is real. When consciousness gets identified, attached to the brain cells, then ego is formed. Your laptop is real, its system is real, but they are not attached to one another. But in case of you, your consciousness, because of certain things, gets identified with the brain cells and ego is formed. Ego is unreal. So when you are awakened, when you become enlightened, your memory is not going to disappear. Memory will be there. Really, it will be crystal clear. You can see very clearly things. You can see the day-to-day events very clear in your life. You're dealing with your employer, employees, with your husband, with your wife. Then it will function more accurately, because there will be no disturbance from the false ego. False ego is, let's take as for example, in family life, husband and wives are interacting with one another. So because of the ego, they do not want to agree with the other. It's something different. When things begin to change, knowingly or unknowingly, in that case, the man is both masculine and feminine aspect. And when these two are imbalanced, they are not able to neutralize one another. Bulb is not lit. There is darkness, and that darkness is ego. And when somehow or the other, your masculine and the feminine aspect neutralize one another, then light is lit, ego is not there. There is awakening. And that state is awakening. The same happens with a female. But when we are dealing with one another, at times as a female, You have to assert your point, not because you are saying, but because logically it is correct and it is in the interest of, it is the interest of whatever be the point. Let us put it this way: you are dealing with the children, the issue of the children. Then each wants to maintain his ego that I am saying this has to go. It is not. The interest of the child is more important. The child has to be provided an environment where he can grow freely. He has the space to grow. Every individual needs a space to grow. Even the trees, when they get space, they grow into volume. When they do not get the space, they get taller and taller. There is a competition to grow taller and to reach the sun and get the sunlight. So at that moment, it is totally a different things. So what it is happening, then the balance can come in. Then ego is not operating at that moment. So there are occasional moments when the husband and wives or the two people, they come to a common agreement, common understanding in the interest of the business, in the interest of the children, in the interest of the family. This is how things happen. When you have awakened or the process of transformation is beginning, this begins to happen. This begins to happen, and you can utilize, do I have to be this time allow my feminine aspect to manifest or the masculine aspect to manifest? This is at your own will. When you become enlightened or the process is continuing, then memory is not going to disappear. Memory will be there. Really, it will be very crystal clear. So in dealing with that particular situation, you have forgotten the memory, how you had to deal. You used to be dealing with one another earlier in a situation. Now it is crystal clear. In the interest, whatever be, in the interest of the children, in the interest of the family, it is very crystal, very clear to you that this has to be this way. Then it will be more accurately, because there is no disturbance coming from the ego. There is no disturbance. How you have been able to put your point, ego is not disturbing. Your thought process will not disappear. Rather, for the first time, you will be capable of thinking in the correct way. You may have examples from time to time in your daily life, in your dealing with your spouse, and so you will realize that at this point, your thinking was very clear, and you are very assertive that this has to be done this way, no other way. Before that, you were simply becoming things, objects. Then you will really be able to think. You are not things now. But then, not the thought process. Then you, not the thought process, will be the master. Because thinking is happening within you. Your thought process is clear. You are the master, not the thought processes. Before, the thought process was the master. You look at it, analyze it between you and your spouse. The thoughts arising in you or in your spouse was the master. And because of that, there was a state of conflict, disturbance. Now, the thought process is happening in you, your thinking is crystal clear, you are the master. Then things will change. Before the thought process was the master, you could not do anything about it. It continued on its own. You were just a victim of your thought process or the thought process of your spouse. You wanted to sleep and the mind continued thinking. You cannot fall asleep. You are under the influence of the mind. You wanted to stop it, but you could not stop. You wanted your spouse to change your way, but you could not help. Really, the more you tried to change him, the more stubborn the mind or the other became. It was your master. The mind was your master. So it can be the mind of your spouse will be the master. When you become enlightened, it will be there. But then it will be simply an instrument. It will be instrumental. When you need it, you will be able to use it. And when you do not need it, it will not crowd your consciousness. It becomes separate. Now, based on this, you can see how things are changing from ego to consciousness. The process of awakening is happening. Moments of satori may come. Earlier on, there used to be constant arguments, no agreement on a particular point. Now, what is the situation? Introspect in your own life. In dealing with your close family members, in dealing with in the office, in dealing with your superiors, in dealing with your subordinates, in dealing with your friends, the way of dealing with one another is changing. Before, thought process was the master, and when thought process is the master, you are not. You are the servant. It is the reflection is more important. When you become enlightened or the process is beginning, then it will be simply an instrument. When you need it, you will use it, and when you don't need it, you do not need to use it. Mind cells will be there, body will be there, memory will be there, thought process will be there. The only thing will not be there is the feeling of I will not be there. So when you are dealing with your spouse, introspect. The thoughts are there, the body is there, the mind is there, everything is there. What is missing? My point. I is missing. It is very difficult to understand. I am trying to explain this to you with introspect this in your own life. How you are moving from reflection to reality. The mirror does not change, you do not change. Only thing is this, you realize that reflection is reflection. Mind will be there. Now you are dealing, and you were dealing with your spouse earlier or friend earlier. The mind is there as it was before. The body is there as it was before. The memory is there as it was before. thought process is there as it was before. The only thing is, you have learned when to be submissive and when to be aggressive. And that makes the greatest change. That means the ego is not manipulating you. Instead, consciousness is working, and consciousness decides that in the interest of whatever be the reason, I have to be submissive or aggressive. Then it will be different. The person will become the other pole. And with the neutralization of the two poles, there will be illumination. There will be bliss. Bliss is the outcome of when the opposite forces neutralize one another. Your aggressiveness, earlier on you are aggressive, the other is aggressive. But nothing is happening. The moment the other is aggressive and you know at this point, if I be submissive or less aggressive, things will work out. And when this continues, eventually you learn the art, and that time the feeling of I-ness is not there. Most of the conflict and problems arise because of this false identity ego. And it is difficult to understand. Buddha walks, Buddha eats, Buddha sleeps, Buddha remembers. He has memory, he has brain cells, but his brain cells are functioning beautifully. But Buddha had said, I walk, but no one walks in me. No one walks in me. This I will come back to you. But no one talks in me. What happens when you are talking? Have you realized who is talking through you? Is your consciousness or memories talking to you? Or memories are speaking through you? That is why he says, when I walk, I walk. When I talk, I talk. When I sleep, I sleep. When I eat, I eat. I eat, but nobody eats in me. When you eat, your memory eats. That time the food that is in front of you will satiate you. But if you are thinking, as normally it happens, you go to the restaurant, the platter of the food is in front of you, the menu is in front of you, you can choose from that menu. But that time we think of the last restaurant where we went, what we ate, but that food is part of your memory. So your memory is surfacing and acting, or imagination that next time we will go to that restaurant. We have heard a great review of that. Then you are not in that moment. Buddha is in the moment. Buddha walks, he eats, he sleeps, he remembers, he has memory, he has brain cells. They are functioning beautifully, not under any duress. But Buddha has said, I walk, no one walks in me. I eat, no one eats in me. I sleep, no one sleeps in me. The inner consciousness is no more the ego, inner consciousness. So when Buddha feels hungry, he cannot feel when Buddha feels hungry, he cannot feel like you. You feel hungry, you say, I am hungry. I am hungry. When Buddha feels hungry, he feels that body is hungry. Body is hungry and I am just the knower. I am feeling there is need for the water. And that knower is without any feeling of I. You say I am hungry. Who is there who is saying that I am hungry? Because you are not aware of the witness in you. So the object and subject are, there is not a clear identification, or they have not merged into one another. When you say I am hungry, that means you are hungry. When Buddha feels hungry, he feels that he is the knower, that there is hunger arising in him. The ego is the false entity. The only false entity, everything else is real. The hunger is there, the body is there, the feeling is there, but the one who identifies with this is false. Two realities can meet, but you are not real. Your spouse is not real. Either they are operating through the thought process or through the memory. You are not memory, memory is in you. Thoughts are arising in you like the reflection in the mirror. But Buddha is reflecting that, what it is arising in him. But he is not identified with it. You are identified with what is being mirrored, what is being reflected through the mirror of ego. The mirror is real, you are real, but the reflection is not you. So that time you are there, thought process is there, but you are identified with the thought. Reflection is good enough, it has a certain purpose, but do not get identified with the reflection. Two realities. Can your reflection in the mirror and my reflection in the mirror meet together? No. That will remain separate. But the two realities can meet with one another. Your reflection in the mirror and my reflection in the mirror can shake hand with one another. Can your reflection and my reflection give a hug to one another? But when you and I are shaking hand, it can reflect. When we are giving hug to one another, it can reflect. So you have to see, you are real, your spouse is real, they can meet, they can hug one another, they can shake with one another, shake hand with one another. But your reflection and my reflection, your reflection and that of your spouse cannot shake hand or cannot hug in any way. Introspect on that. And the reflection is your false identity. So when you are real, devoid of ego sense, your spouse is devoid of the ego sense, then when you hug one another, there is a totally different feeling. There is no one in between. And that gives you the blissfulness. Two realities can meet, and in that reality, something happens. The third, the epiphenomena is created. When two realities meet, something false can happen. But the false can happen only if there is consciousness. If there is no consciousness, the false cannot happen. Oxygen and hydrogen can meet, and out of that meeting, what happens? A false water can happen. The false can happen only when you are conscious, because only consciousness can err. Matters cannot make a mistake. This you have to understand. Matters cannot make mistake. Matter cannot be false. Matter are always true because they do not have the mind. Matter cannot deceive and cannot be deceived. Only the consciousness can, so it has to be aware. With consciousness there is a possibility of awareness, and with consciousness there is a possibility to go beyond that, to be enlightened. With consciousness you are aware that you are, and with that awareness ego can arise, and you are conscious that reflection is there, then you can transcend. Ego is the false, I repeat it again for your clarity. Ego is the false identity or entity, the only false entity. Everything else is real. And when two realities meet one another, in their meeting, a third epiphenomena happens. Epiphenomena can be created. When two realities meet, there is every possibility that something false can happen. But the false can happen only if there is consciousness. If there is no consciousness, like between the matter which have no consciousness, you are simply existing there. But the false can happen only if there is consciousness. If there is no consciousness, the false cannot happen. Means consciousness means understanding that I am there. Your spouse thinks that I am there. The false can happen. If both of you exists as being, just a presence is not consciousness, it is presence. Oxygen and hydrogen can meet, and out of that a false water can happen. False can happen only when you are conscious of your presence, because only consciousness can err, make a mistake. Matters do not make a mistake. Matter means the pre-stage. Matters cannot make mistake, cannot be false. Matter is always true. Oxygen is true, hydrogen is true. Matter cannot deceive and at the same time cannot be deceived. Remember, there is another thing which is also important. Matter is always real, never false, but also never true. The matter cannot know what truth is. Matter is real, it can never be false, but it can never know truth. If you cannot make a mistake, how can you know there is truth, or what you have done that was a mistake? So it is very important to make a mistake, to err. Only then you will know the truth. So both possibilities open simultaneously, Human consciousness can make a mistake and can also know that it has erred, make a mistake, and can move away from that. It was a mistake and can move away from this. That is the beauty of it. The danger is there, but the danger is bound, and the danger is bound to be there. With every growth, new danger comes in. For matter, there is no danger. Matter is always real, never false, but also not true. Matter cannot know what truth is. If there is no consciousness, you will not be able to make a difference between if this was a mistake or it was not. Look at it this way. Whenever a new thing grows in existence, a new thing evolves. New dangers with it come into existence. For a stone, there is a danger. There are small bacteria. In those bacteria, sex does not exist in the way it exists in a man or an animal. They simply divide their bodies. When one bacterium grows bigger and bigger, that is what happens in unicellular. In case of amoeba, when it grows to a certain extent, the body automatically divides into two. The parent body divides into two. Now there are two bacteria. These bacteria can live eternally because there is no birth, there is no death. No birth, no death. Try to understand this again. Whenever a thing grows in existence, then a new thing evolves. Now the danger comes with it into existence. For a stone, there is no danger. A stone, there is no danger. But there are small bacteria. In those bacteria, sex does not exist the way it exists in man and animals. It has to be interaction between the opposite poles in order for the process of fertilization to begin, for growth to happen. But in case of unicellular, like you are not unicellular, you have a masculine aspect and the feminine aspect in you. So when these two interact with one another, only then reproduction happens. The process of growth happens. So they grow into this size. And when they grow, that they cannot remain as it is, they simply divide their bodies. When one bacterium grows bigger and bigger, when it reaches to a certain extent, its body automatically divides into two. The parent body has divided itself into two. Now there are two bacteria. That's how the bacteria grow. There is no sex cells in them. They multiply, and that creates the problem. Those bacteria can live eternally, good or bad. Like how does lactobacillus bacteria develop? You are making yogurt. There is lactose. When you put enzymes, they are known as enzymes, a good bacteria. So when you put the lactobacillus enzyme into the milk, it interacts with lactose and they multiply. They multiply, there are no sex cells, and they grow. So there can be good bacteria like vinegar is made through that process alone. Probiotic is a love affair between bacteria and the sugar content in it. Whatever it is. So then they grow and the nature changes. Now there are two bacteria in yogurt. It is the lactobacillus bacteria that converts lactose into lactic acid and milk is converted into yogurt. Sugarcane juice or any kind of juice, when it is fermentation is the process of the bacteria to grow, multiply in abundance. They have no birth, they no life. They can live forever. The more bacteria are there exposed to the air, the yogurt will get sour. You can put, this is how the alcohol is made. Bacteria are grown, whether it is a cane or you can get the cane, the sugar cane vinegar, you can get apple cider vinegar, you can get the vinegar, the date vinegar with anything where bacteria are allowed to grow and multiply. They have no birth. Where does the bacteria come from? Where does the bacteria come from? They are a part of the existence. When a food has to decompose, where does the bacteria come from? They are born, they emerge from within. So no birth, no death. They are eternal. And the reverse process also happens. If the food is not available, two bacteria will come near and nearer and become one. Their bodies will become one, no birth, no death. With sex entered birth, and with birth entered death. With birth entered accidentally, with individuality entered ego. Now it is bacteria grow when there is a food. Bacteria will not grow in water. For lactobacillus bacteria to grow, there has to be lactose. And for vinegar to grow, there has to be fructose. The sugar content, sugar is the food for bacteria to grow. Fructose to be in the fruit juice, and whatever fruit juice is, if you allow and the bacteria grows, there is fermentation. And the reverse can also happen. If food is not available, two bacteria will come close to one another and they will become one. Their bodies will become one. That is not birth. That is not death. With sex entered birth, and with birth entered the possibility of death. If there was no birth, there would have been no death. And with birth entered individuality. You are born as an individual. With birth entered individuality, and with individuality entered ego. A process. Two processes. When the body becomes bigger and bigger, it breaks into and becomes two. Bacteria multiply. When the two bodies come close to one another and sex has entered, you entered into birth. With sex you entered into birth, and with birth you entered into death, and with birth you entered into individuality. With individuality you entered into ego. Bacteria do not have. Every growth has its own potential danger, but they are beautiful. If you can understand this, there is no need to fall to them, to become a victim to them, and you can transcend them. Bacteria have transcended. And in that process, they converted lactose into lactic acid, fructose into wine. You can transcend. Bodies have come together. You interact with one another. The death. So now birth has entered. So you realize that birth is for a purpose. To grow into individuality and to grow into ego, or to go beyond that. And when you transcend, you mature and you achieve a greater synthesis. If you fall a victim, the greater synthesis will not be achieved. Spirituality is the peak, the last, the ultimate synthesis in the process of growth. The ultimate synthesis of growth. The false is transcended and the real absorbed. Only the real remains. The false drops automatically. But you don't think that body is unreal. It is real. Brain is real. Thought process is real. The only relationship between the consciousness and thought process is unreal. That is the mirror. And that reflection is ego. That is the lie. That is the false. And that ties you, that keeps you in bondage. You can untie it. And the moment you untie, you have opened the door to come out. Come out of that narrow individuality. So spirituality is the peak, the ultimate synthesis of growth. False has transcended. The unreal, the real is absorbed in it. Only real remains, and all that is false disappears. So when you reach the ultimate, you realize all that was false has disappeared. Only the real has remained. But don't think that body is unreal. Don't think the mind is unreal. Don't think that brain cells are unreal. They are real. The body is real. The brain cells are real. Thought process is real. Only the relationship between consciousness and the thought process is unreal. That is the relationship between you and the mirror. Out of that, reflection arises. Mirror is not unreal. You are not unreal. But when there is a relationship between mirror and you, your reflection starts. That reflection is unreal, that reflection is ego. And that reflection ties you. You can untie that. The moment you untie, you have opened the door to the beyond. The doors of enlightenment, doors of awakening are open to you. Enough for now.